Hello friends, welcome to Squaird Plans, where creative planning and organization comes to life. I'm Stephanie, and today we're going to be talking about how I go about lettering in my planner, particularly my faith planner. I'll be sharing some of my tips and tricks on how to approach getting into hand lettering and improving your own handwriting along the way. Today's topic is on the cursive and brush lettering techniques I use to get to where I am today, and I will share some options for adding variety to your basic cursive style. So if that sounds good, let's jump in. Okay, so let me go ahead and start off by showing you guys a spread from this month's faith planner. Give you guys an idea of how I use my lettering techniques each and every day. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of variation here on the font styles and hand lettering styles that I use to complete the verse of the day, which is what I do in my faith planner. I have done a video previously talking about the different ways to vary print styles of lettering, but today we're going to talk mainly about cursive lettering and get into brush lettering as well. I started faith planning quite a bit ago, and I have really enjoyed building out my baseline lettering style from a basic cursive lettering to a unique style to myself in brush lettering. So that's what we're going to talk about today and kind of how I progressed to where I am now. I am not a lettering expert by any means. I'm just sharing my thoughts and techniques that I used, and do take that as just my own personal experience. It might work for you, it might not, but that is what I'm sharing with you today. So cursive lettering is a style of lettering built for speed. So connecting the letters is a way to write a little bit faster than, say, normal print lettering. Many of us learned cursive hand lettering back when we were kids in school, although I don't think that's quite the norm anymore. But if you don't have a baseline cursive lettering to start with, you can still do this, but you might want to at least build a knowledge of how the letters are formed in cursive lettering in order to progress to the next stages I'm going to mention. This is my baseline normal cursive lettering that I learned back in school, although the letters have changed a little bit since I've morphed the letters using what I call a monoline style of lettering. So back in the day, I used to do a very traditional look to all my cursive letters, but with my monoline lettering, I've tweaked some of the letters to look a little bit more full, a little bit more bouncy, and look a little less like the old school cursive lettering. So I'm calling that a monoline style of lettering because we're going to use that to progress into our brush lettering in the future. And how I went about changing those letter forms, I actually went out onto the internet and just looked at handwriting that I really admired and wanted to emulate, and then sought out the changes I thought I could make to my own hand lettering to make it look more like that style. So it was basically just evaluating what looked different, what were they doing that I liked, and incorporated that into my own standard of lettering. And once I did that, I started to practice it using the incorporated letters as I was doing my faith lettering each day. So that daily practice really helped push me along and get that muscle memory for the letter shapes that I wanted. And I went ahead and just highlighted underneath them so you can see which ones had major changes, mostly the loopy styles and large bumps that I added in. And the next style that I started in with was the bounce lettering style. This style of my own monoline lettering, I wanted to be a bit bouncy, as you can see, so it's a little bit hard to tell the difference between the two on my own standard of handwriting. But the idea is to make some of the letters a little bit smaller and some of the letters a little bit larger, dragging the tails on some and, shrinking up maybe like the vowels or the smaller letters that can be really shrunken in. Just playing around with the heights and up and down flow of your letters. It's a little bit hard to teach, but it's something you can just work on, practice with, and try different things out, what works best with your own style of lettering and the letter shapes that you use. There might be certain letters that work best being elongated and other letters that are best maybe bumped up, like the M's or the R's, and working from there. The next technique I want to discuss is extended letters. This is where you take your basic monoline lettering and then you elongate the spacing between the letters to make it look more extended. You just take up more space and it feels a little bit more full and spacious as you go across the page. Again, very easy to tweak whatever your natural style of monolettering is. So that is one easy variation. And next we're going to discuss mixing in a bit of print lettering with your monoline lettering. That is used a lot in the planner community. I see a lot of different styles of mixing in some print letters and some cursive letters, kind of tying in a specific style of hand lettering for quotes and things. So this is just an example of a way I might approach it in a monoline style, mixing in some print letters there with some cursive. Next, I want to talk about brush lettering. We will start off with talking about the best tools for brush lettering, in my opinion. If you're going to be doing any kind of small print brush lettering, in a smaller space, highly recommend this Tombow Fudenosuke brush tip pen in a hard tip. If you want to really get into brush lettering, you'll probably be familiar with the Tombow dual tip brush pens, which have a lot larger tip and are a little bit harder to control for beginners, but are very popular as well for brush lettering. So I would highly recommend, again, if you are starting off, start with that Tombow Fudenosuke brush tip pen, and then as you get more into it, maybe graduate to a Tombow dual tip brush pen. And here I'm just showing you some of the basics. On the downstrokes is when you want to push a little bit harder so you get a thicker stroke. And then you really want to go super light on the upstrokes. That is where you'll see like the finer lines. So the basic drills are, of course, drawing like circles where you're pushing down to start and lightening up as you come back up. You've also got just the basic downstroke, upstroke, so you can practice thick and thin. And then also the connecting down and up strokes there for lettering in particular and learning how to connect the letters together. So those are just the basic drills. There's lots of other ways to go about that, but those ones are basic. So if you don't want to really do a lot of research on it, those will get you started in brush control, and then you can move on to altering your current monoline lettering into brush lettering, which is how I approached it. So here is me using that Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen with my own monoline lettering. Some tips I have for you here that I learned along the way is to lift up the brush between each letter. So that really helps you keep control and keep things consistent as you go through. I did not start like this, of course. It looked a lot rougher when I began. You can go back to my 2021 Faith Planner videos and you can see where I started when I was getting started with brush lettering. So don't get discouraged if yours doesn't look awesome right away. Just keep at it. It took me a few months to really get the hang of it, and the pen really did make such a difference. So I can't stress enough how important it is to have a good brush pen as a beginner. So I did some thick, thin strokes there with each of my letters and connected them just as I would in my standard monoline lettering. I highly recommend you really nail down the style of the letters that you want to use for your brush lettering before you start brush lettering. That technique, I think, is really imperative if you want to have something that's natural to you and is a custom style to your own hand lettering. And as you guys can see, I'm still very inconsistent as far as my own thick, thin strokes. Sometimes I do a good job, especially when I go slower, but when I'm going fast, I know that I miss sometimes some of the thick strokes and maybe don't pull up enough on some of my thin strokes. That said, here I'm showing you guys my bounce style of lettering with the brush pen. And again, it's a little bit hard to distinguish between my standard brush lettering style and then the bouncy style because my style is a little bit bouncy. But you can see some differentiation between the letters. I do try to make some letters a little bit longer and maybe some a little bit smaller. But again, that's a variation that you can try with your own lettering if you do tend to have a very straight line mono brush lettering style. And here I'm showing you how the extended might look with the brush tip pen. Very similar to the monoline look, just a little bit more character with the brush tip. This one's a pretty easy one to start implementing if you have your basic monoline lettering dialed in. Then it's a fairly easy one to control because of the elongated letters. Just a tip, you might want to try this one before even maybe the bouncy version if you are just wanting to see some variation and haven't quite nailed down your own monoline lettering style just yet. And for the final sample, I'm going to show you how to use that mixed print and cursive style in with the brush tip. I feel like this style looks a lot better with the brush. I don't tend to use it in a monoline format. I always tend to use it when I am using the brush tip. It just creates a style of writing that maybe looks a little less cute, a little less feminine, but has some character to it. So that's it, friends. Different ways to approach cursive lettering and brush lettering in your planner. I've shared with you my own personal experience with how I improved my monoline lettering into a brush style of lettering, as well as some variations that you can do on your own handwriting to add variety and interest to your planner or journal. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below. Also, go ahead and leave me a comment if you'd like to get in touch. And think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, if you'd like to see more of my videos. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Bye.